Hey everyone, hope you're having a great day. Welcome back to Reading with Tatiana. And today I'm reviewing Hook by Michael Moss, Food, Free Will, and How the Food Giants Exploit Our Addictions. And I gave this book a 3 out of 5. My Booktuber shout today goes to Enter the Book. I came across her channel through Jillian from Novel Opinions. They're doing a really cool thing where they're doing a series, or I guess like an exercise or a social experiment called The Traveling Book, where people will pick a 5-star book that they've read. They will read the book and annotate it with their assigned color, and they're going to kind of do like a book exchange and send it to the next person who would then also annotate it with their assigned color and then and keep passing it along. So if you want to join the Traveling Book group or community, I'll link Enter the Book's channel down below where you can see all the details. And as always, before I go into my full book review, if you like my content, I would appreciate if you hit the subscribe button. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you read this book, Hooked, I would love to hear your opinions and your thoughts about the food giants and the way they have used our biology against ourselves. Hooked was originally published in 2021. However, the paperback copy, which I bought from the library, did a re-release in 2022. I always kind of wonder, do you prefer hardcover or paper copy books? For me, I definitely prefer paper copies, but I find that a lot of books in bookstores come out as hard copies and are usually more expensive too. So I wish there was more of a push towards paper copy, but I guess they want to make more money, which makes more sense to me. Anyway, so the genre of this book is nonfiction, and I would say it's specifically about food and addiction, and also a commentary on our society and how the food industry works. A bit about the author, Michael Moss. So he is an American novelist and journalist, and since 2000 he is actually an investigative reporter for the New York Times. He is also an adjunct professor at Columbia, which is in New York, and he currently lives in Brooklyn with his wife and 2 sons. I unfortunately wasn't able to find too much about him present day. I kind of wish I learned more about his upbringing and stuff, but there wasn't too much information online. I also want to mention that this book, Hook, isn't directly a sequel per se, but his first big release was actually back in 2013, which is kind of also about the same thing. It was called Salt, Sugar, Fat, How the Food Giants Hooked Us, and it talks about companies like Kraft, Coca-Cola, Lunchables, Frito-Lay, and Nestle, which he also talks about Nestle and Kraft quite a bit in this book, Hooked. So these books, I feel like it's not like a sequel to that first book, but I definitely think it goes hand in hand. And because he's an investigative journalist, I feel like he, in the past 9 years, have investigated more and add more truth or reveal more about the food industry and these food giants. If you've been subscribed to me for a while and been watching my book reviews, usually I'll do a storyline and characters and common themes about the book. But because it's a nonfiction and there isn't really a plot or characters, I'm just going to share things that I found really interesting for me that I want to share, facts or fairy things that are eye-opening for me about the food industry and the food giants. I won't share everything because I think this book is worth reading. However, it is quite dense, and I definitely feel like I really hope Netflix picks it up for a docuseries, because I think that way it can be attainable for the masses, because not everyone has the capacity or the interest to read such a densely packed book. There is a bit of a storyline in the sense that it talks about the first human, and also talks about the food industry from as early as the 1500s and how society followed food back then, up until the 1800s, up until the 60s and 50s, up until modern time. So it is a plot in the sense of that, but in terms of an overarching plot or narrative, I don't really think so. So one thing that I found that was an interesting way to start the book was Michael Moss talks about addiction in general and how food addiction, comparing it to drug addiction. So a fun fact that he shared, or I guess not a fun fact, an interesting fact, was that during the Vietnam War, lots of veterans had used heroin in war, but a lot of them, when they came back to America, a lot of them actually, 6 out of 10 of them were able to quit easily and were no longer addicted to heroin, which is super interesting for me, because I feel like a lot of heroin users or meth users, they're addicted. Once you do it, you can't quit. But Michael Moss argues that addiction is obviously, there is the chemistry or biological aspect of it, but the other component of it is that addiction also happens because of the accessibility. For a lot of these war veterans, yes, maybe the 4 of the 10 that were addicted still after war, maybe actively seek it out or maybe had access to it, so that's why they continued the habit. But for 6 of the 10, they were just able to easily quit because it wasn't something that was available right away. It wasn't something they need to function. So I thought that was very interesting because then when you think about the drug addiction in that sense, then you can see the parallel to food addiction, because food is an essential part of our living, and with processed food, it's readily available everywhere. So that's how the book starts, and in the next part of the book, he kind of talks about how these big food giants make processed food easily accessible, and it also gives us the illusion of choice, that we think that we have the choice, but really they're using our biology against us to be more addicted to processed foods. So when I say they're using our biology against us, I guess some background info is they said that our brain, think about how there's a different neural pathways, and they're all kind of shallow when we're born, and over time we have the power to deepen them with practice or intended conditions or behavior. So one thing I learned that was very interesting was, you always see on TV or even when you were a kid that you didn't like vegetables, but over time, like now I love vegetables and I prefer them over other things. So there actually is a scientific reason why. So apparently that when we're young, we're averted to things like broccoli, spinach, and yogurt because broccoli has acerbic, spinach has bitter, and yogurt has a sour taste. And the reason why we are averted to these type of flavors when we're young is because these flavors, our biology, I guess it interprets it as rotting or spoilage. So when our parents force us, or adults or in our life force us to eat these type of vegetables that are healthy for us, over time we deepen these neural pathways to associate them to taste less bad because we're conditioned and used to the flavor. So these is the natural biology of how we react to whole natural foods. There is a bit of aversion. And it also makes sense because a lot of natural and whole foods we eat, they do eventually rot and spoil. So depending when you eat them, our body reacts to, oh, I'm kind of hesitant to eat it. Whereas if you eat something that's like a fast processed food, there are so many preservatives and so much added sugar that's going to taste good no matter what. And sugar is a natural positive association, and it can develop as early as when we are in our mother's womb. So that is also how these corporations are using our biology against us. So it's not just a matter of parents being great parents and not feeding their kids processed sugar or added sugar items. It's also on the parent to change their diet when they are, I guess, planning to conceive, and also when they're pregnant. And it's really crazy how these food giants add this addiction to sugar, which I'll share in the next segment. One method these food giants use our biology against us and fuel our addiction to sugar is there's an additive, which now that I've learned about it, I think I've seen before in passing, but never really kind of questioned what it was. But now that I've learned about it, I kind of see in every item I have in my pantry that is processed or has additives is this ingredient called maltodextrin, which now that I've said to you, maltodextrin, you'll probably see it everywhere too. And basically what it is a manufacturer, I guess, additive, and it is the same chemical structure as sugar. However, you can't see it, you can't taste it, you can't feel it, but it has as many calories as sugar. And why this additive is so powerful is because, for example, if you had 2 glasses of just tap water, and one of them you just leave as is, and one you add maltodextrin as an additive, when you drink it, even though you can't see it or feel it or taste it, your body will still somehow naturally want the one that has the additive to it. So a lot of these food giants will add maltodextrin to a lot of their products because they'll make you crave it even if you don't think it's there, which is like a crazy powerful tool. And the problem with these additives is that it's not physically taking up space. So because it's not doing that, there's a delayed signal for a body to realize when it's actually full. So you'll just keep eating and you'll consume more calories, and then you'll realize you're full a lot later. Whereas if you eat lots of whole grains and natural foods and fibrous vegetables, because they're physically taking up space, you'll be more in tune with your natural hunger cues when you're actually satiated and full. So that's why it's important, if you're trying to eat better, to focus on foods that are lower calorie and higher volume, because that will really help you with feeling full quicker. Another thing that I thought was interesting about the book that I learned that kind of blew my mind was for the past 2 years, just as I get older into my mid 30s, I think about my eating habits and how, I was raised with the idea of breakfast, lunch, and dinner for a healthy lifestyle. But I find that as I'm aging and my metabolism is slowing down, that I don't really need to eat 3 meals. And sometimes I fare better with having one big meal and maybe 2 smaller meals, or maybe just one big meal and just that's it, depending on my activity level for that day. And I've come to realize that the breakfast, lunch, and dinner is something that's kind of been pushed on us by society, and people eat however they want to eat because it's very natural for us to fast. But society and these food giants kind of push us to eat all the time, so we keep our sugar levels high and always crave food. But it's normal to feel hunger, and you're not going to die if you feel hunger for a day or even 2, as long as you're hydrated. So my favorite book that blew my mind was that the food industry had breakfast, lunch, and dinner going, and then they added sugar to everything for convenience. And they realized there was a gap in the market, and they wanted to add snacking as something seen as essential. And that just blew my mind because I always thought snacking was something that I do in between meals every now and then, or to treat myself as a luxury. But this book talks about how the food industry intentionally added it in, because snacking, when you do it here and there for a day, it adds up to a quarter of your full daily calorie intake. So that also is a big gap in the market that they could use to make more money, which that blew my mind to learn about. I also mentioned earlier how these food giants give us the illusion of choice. Essentially, if you think about it, you don't need a really diverse food habits to be satiated and to live a healthy life. However, in modern society, we just want more and more choices. So a fun fact I learned was that in the 1980s, on an average grocery store, there was a average of 6,000 different items. In 1990s, that doubled to 12,000 items. And today, an average grocery store has on average 30,000 unique items. And it's like, why do we need so many choices? And these food giants just find ways for us to feel like we have choices, but all the choices are kind of like not great for you or would build to your food addiction, which I thought was also very interesting. And to add to that, these food giants, so one example in the book, I won't say all of them because I want to spoil it in case you want to find out for yourself, but one thing that was very eye-opening for me was the company Heinz, which you're probably familiar with, which is usually associated with the ketchup bottle. So they actually started in the 1800s, and over time they realized if they add sugar to their ketchup, then it'll make people crave it more. And Heinz ketchup is quite sugary. You can taste it very well. So then they found that they were capturing the processed food industry to make people bigger, and at some point in their company's history, they actually realized that they also want to capture the other end of the market, which is people trying to be healthier and trying to lose weight. So they actually bought out Weight Watchers, and if you're familiar with Weight Watchers, they are a program where you pay services where they help you and coach you to have better eating habits, to help you more accountable to lose weight. So it's like, whoa, Heinz, this like food conglomerate that wants you to eat more processed food, has now captured the opposite end of the market to help you lose weight. So it's kind of like a cycle, right? And then in the book, it also talks about that Heinz, they were like, we're also go by the company that Weight Watchers recommends their members to use. I believe it was called like Food Away or something. So they produce like low calorie, like healthy meals. That's Weight Watchers. So Heinz decided to buy this company that Weight Watchers members use. So basically, they've captured the whole market, and they just need to keep all your customers in this contained cycle. So that just really blew my mind too. And the book kind of talks about how like they want government to come in and control and regulate these markets, but it's kind of hard to, because food's like an essential item, and also like it's hard to just blame these companies when people eat regardless, and it's hard to pinpoint that it's just this company's fault for causing your addiction when it could just be you. So it's just I don't know, it just really blew my mind, and it's just very interesting to learn about. A other thing that Michael Moss talks about that is interesting is also the adjacent industry of the diet industry in relation to the food industry, where every diet trend out there, from as far as you go back to the start of diet trends, is always people saying they realize they're obese or overweight or struggle with food addiction. They have a eureka moment where they find a method that works for them and they have success, and they try to sell these dieting programs and these food products to you, but in the end, as people, some people have results and some don't. They always say, oh, but it doesn't work for everyone. So it's just also talking about how, like, I guess, predatory these industries are. And, you know, if you decide to use these programs or these promises, to really question their intention. And, you know, maybe it's more about looking into yourself to change habits over time than for a quick fix. Because even if you do any of these diets like keto or I think there's the lemon juice diet, yeah, you'll probably lose weight right away in the first few months quickly, but the quicker you lose weight, the quicker it is to gain it back. And, you know, from my personal experience, I was slightly bigger before. You know, the slower you lose weight, the more likely you're able to keep it off, and it's more about lifestyle changes over time. Those were the highlights that stuck out to me. Sorry if it was kind of chaotic. It was hard to really put it all into a coherent way because there wasn't a plot, narrative, or characters, but those are all points that I thought was really interesting in the book that really stuck out to me. So now I'll share things I didn't like about this book. I did give it a 3 out of 5, and it's not because of the context, because it was all interesting. The reason I gave it out of a 5 because, you know, my ratings is more about readability and if I would recommend it to a friend or a stranger like you watching this video. And I gave it a 3 out of 5 because things I didn't like was, I kind of mentioned before, it's not a thick book. It's only like, I think, so it's 270 pages. But 50 pages of it is just notes and acknowledgements, so it's really only like 220 pages. So it's a short book, but the font's small, and it's also very dense. Like, there's a lot of information in even just one paragraph, and it reads like a textbook. And, you know, I really feel like, I really hope they make a documentary, because I think a lot of the general population will benefit from this information, but not everyone has the capacity to consume it. So that's my reason why I didn't like this book. Another reason I didn't like this book is because it's such a heavy topic, is each chapter is quite long, like 20-30 pages. And I think for me, as someone who reads, that I'll read until, like, I would stop. When I read a book, my sessions are kind of dictated by, okay, I'll read till this chapter, or I'll read until, you know, 5 chapters. And with this book, each chapter is so long that sometimes, like, after like 10 pages, I'm like, whoa, I need a break, but I don't want to stop halfway. So I think this book would have benefited from shorter chapters. Reasons why I did enjoy this book, which I kind of share, was it was very eye-opening, and I learned a lot about the food industry and food giants, and just being more aware of why my snacking behavior is the way it is, and, you know, maybe I have been conditioned over time, over the course of my life. So it was very great to read. I really enjoyed it. You know, I just think that if you decide to read this book, just to kind of have it kind of like beside your bed to flip through here and there versus like reading it all the way through. On Goodreads, this book got an average of 3.79 out of 5, which was very surprising to me because when I was reading each written review, the reviews were really high. So I kind of think people who gave it bad reviews didn't take the time to actually maybe analyze or read the book. But I think if you do, it's quite an enjoyable book. So reasons why I think people gave it low ratings, there weren't too many comments though, was I think it was a very depressing read for a lot of people. It was too eye-opening, and also some people that did give like maybe a 3 or 2 stars felt like it was nothing new. But I think these people probably are very knowledgeable already and maybe are very in tune with what's going on. But I think like the average Joe probably doesn't. So I think this is why this book had lots of reviews, highly rated by lots of readers. And to add on to my previous reasons why I like this book, other readers on Goodreads love this book because they felt it was very concise, gave lots of examples, and, you know, just made people realize what these companies have the power to do. And it's not always, or I would say never, in the end consumer's best interests. Why I think you should read this book? I think you should read this book if you are unaware of what the food giants do that affect your day life. I think you should read it. If you're someone that struggles with snack addiction, food addiction, maybe you're having trouble with losing weight or you're overweight, this book is super eye-opening, and, you know, it kind of puts the blame onto the food giants and not you as an individual, which, you know, in a way, I agree, sometimes things are out of your control, but at the end of the day, it's up to you to make those choices to condition your body to stop craving these things. But reading this book kind of makes you feel less guilty if you ever feel guilty that you eat these snacks, because it's not your fault. Literally, they're making it so it's addicting. So really, really push yourself to eat more whole foods, and over time, you will learn to enjoy them more. And actually, believe it or not, sometimes I don't even crave snacks because I'm in a good like whole food sprint. Now I'll share how this book made me feel, because I always love to ask people how a book made them feel when they recommend one to me, because if you ask me personally, in a week, a year, 5 years from now, I'll never remember exactly what the book was about, but I'll always remember how it made me feel. So this book, Hook by Michael Moss, it made me feel more conscious about my relationship to food, especially highly processed food and junk food. Like, it's really making me, as I said before on reasons why you should read this book, it made me feel less putting the guilt on me. And I am just a target for these big corporations to profit off of. So this book made me feel more conscious about the choices I make when I eat, and to really think about focusing more on whole foods all the time instead of just like 50 or 60% of the time. I do want to say, as a life lesson that I've learned through my years of weight gain and weight loss, that, if you're someone that struggles with food, is one thing that really changed for me is to stop looking at food as a reward or punishment, because food is essential to us to live, and we need calories to live. So the important lesson is to treat yourself, but not too much. Everything in moderation. Eat healthy, but it's fine to not eat healthy all the time. And for me personally, aside from like if you have any illnesses or disabilities or something bigger than just a normal person, is the secret to losing weight is moving more and eating less. But that's obviously in a very simple form, because you may have all the things I listed before that exist, which I'm not aware of. That is the end of my book review. If you watch until the end, please comment down below with your favorite junk food or food emoji, because I know this video was a bit dense and a bit dark, I guess, and also all over the place. So if you watch until the end, I really, really appreciate it. But if you don't, that's fine too. I don't take it personally. So if you read this book, Hooked by Michael Moss, I'd love to see your comments down below, what you thought about it, or if you have any opinions about these food giants or any like fun facts for me to know, I would love to hear it. And if you want to join me next time, I am going to start We Were Liars by Lockhart. This is pretty high reviews on Goodreads. I am going in blind. I have no idea what the premise is, so it should be interesting. Alright, thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!